Wednesday night, a new entertainment evening starts on ABC when The Bill returns with a new series of grassroots police work in the rough, tough streets of Wapping. Bobbies at their best. The Bill, 8:30 Wednesday. Followed at 9:20 by the premiere of the American smash hit series, The Days and Nights of Molly Dodd.
You define married as having a wife and children.
As in when we first started going out together and I asked, are you married? You said, absolutely not.
Oh, well, okay, but that's your interpretation, not mine.
Oh, Dennis, please.
Then at 9:45, it's a brand new series of antique television at its best, when For Love or Money returns with host Clive Hale and experts Sotheby-trained Anna Clark and leading antique dealers Peter Cook and Peter Code. That's Wednesday evening on ABC.
All right, embark.
8 o'clock Thursdays, ABC presents a season of comedy classics, beginning with that old favourite, Dad's Army.
So now, what did you think of that? You never cease to amaze me with...
Then at 8:30, the premiere of the 4-part series, Images of Australia. Historian Russell Braddon presents a probing insight into the uncomfortable truths behind the myth and legend that most Australians have accepted as historical fact.
And maybe the time's come to bury the legend of Ned Kelly along with his mouldering bones, and to admit that he and all the fraternity of so-called gentlemen bushrangers were in fact not gentlemen at all, but squalid criminals and habitual predators.
Images of Australia, followed at 9:30 by the premiere of the 5-part thriller, The Detective. Commander Kenneth Crocker of Scotland Yard Special Intelligence finds his traditional values out of step, his professional integrity out of place, and that going by the book can make you a victim in the game of power politics and corruption. That's Thursday night on ABC.
Good evening, Richard Palfreyman with the late news. Australia Day celebrations around the country are winding up. In Sydney, hundreds of thousands of people are making their way home after a day around the harbour, culminating in a spectacular fireworks display.
This was the grand finale to the bicentennial Australia Day celebrations in Sydney. It started off literally with a bang, a 200-gun salute, and then the biggest and brightest fireworks display ever seen in Australia. The fireworks were set off from 4 different locations around the harbour, so that spectators on either side of the bridge had a view. But when it was over, it was a mad scramble to get home, with the hundreds of thousands of spectators all taxing Sydney's free public transport to the limit.
Earlier, a majestic procession down the harbour of the First Fleet reenactment ships.
200 years ago, they sailed into a quiet harbour they called Port Jackson. Today, there were other boats to greet them. Not hundreds, but thousands. And hundreds of thousands watched from the land. They crowded the roofs of buildings. They climbed every structure that offered a view and filled every outcrop that nature provided. It was to be the most important engagement for the Prince and Princess of Wales. Diana wore bicentenary green, Charles a bicentenary yellow tie. A crowded Opera House forecourt heard the Prince suggest that we remember the wrongs and injustices, but put aside the guilt and celebrate. The First Fleet was moving closer now. There'd been no official landing, but the welcome was self-evident. For those with a ringside seat, it was the show of a lifetime.
While Australia celebrated 200 years of white settlement, Aboriginal groups from all over the country gathered in Sydney for a day of protest and of mourning.
While it was a big day for white Australia, it was a momentous one for the country's original inhabitants. Never before had so many Aboriginal people gathered to show Australia and the world their grief and heartbreak over the treatment they'd received in the last 200 years. The first march from Redfern to Mrs Macquarie's chair earlier today attracted about 2,000 people, including the senior Aboriginal public servant Charles Perkins and Tasmanian activist Michael Mansell. The groundswell of black opinion was evident in the rally this afternoon, when thousands of Aborigines marched towards the harbour. They'd come from as far away as the Northern Territory and Central Australia. It was the culmination of months of planning, and the marchers were determined that their image of sober non-violence would be maintained. They were joined by thousands of white supporters, and together they converged near the War Memorial. For the tribal elders, it was a tribute to those who had died in the struggle.
If there was an award for an Australian Baby of the Year, it would have to go to the latest offspring of the Chadbourne family of Ingle Farm in Adelaide.
Dale Allen Chadbourne was born at 5:21 this morning, weighing 7 pounds 3 ounces. But not only does young Dale share his birthday with the nation, he also shares it with his older brother Ryan, born on Australia Day 2 years ago. Diane and Robert Chadbourne say they didn't deliberately set out to be patriotic parents. It's a mere fluke that both their sons were born on the nation's birthday, the first in the Jubilee year and their second in the bicentenary.
I was due a lot earlier with both of them. I was 4 days late with Ryan and 5 days late with Dale. It's a bit of a coincidence.
The Chadbournes are certainly an all-Australian family.
And now Mike Bailey with a look at the national weather.
Good evening. Well, after pleasant Australia Day weather, it looks like continued settled patterns for tomorrow. On the satellite picture, there's some cloud down to the south associated with a weakening front. Some showers likely about the southwest of Tasmania, though, and along the northeast coast of New South Wales, a shower or two there as well. In the tropics, some showers and storms, and some cloud moving still very slowly down through Western Australia into South Australia. On the synoptic chart, high pressure, and that's going to build further into the Tasman Sea tomorrow. Prognostic chart shows it moving gradually across to that region. Now the forecasts around the capitals, mostly fine for Brisbane, fine and sunny in Sydney, warm in both Canberra and Melbourne. For Hobart, mainly fine, a very warm one for Adelaide, and hot in Perth, evening storms for Darwin.
And that's all from us tonight. From everybody at ABC News, a happy Australia Day and good night.
Science returns to ABC TV 8 o'clock Wednesday with a new series of Quantum. Karina Kelly goes to mysterious Dinosaur Cove for the intriguing tale of Australia's most important dinosaur find. Jill Emberson checks a dramatic new way of tracing fingerprints. And Jeffrey Birchfield sees the high tech used to keep historical books from falling apart. Quantum, Wednesday night at 8 on ABC.